There are exactly two ways to pay your rent every month. You can earn it, or own an asset that pays it for you. If you try that second option with traditional dividend stocks, you run into a math problem. Most stocks pay out quarterly. Your landlord wants 30 days. So does your power company and your grocery store. Monthly dividend stocks are engineered to plug that exact gap. They distribute cash on the same schedule your bills are due. To figure out exactly what these stocks can cover, we need a baseline. Let's start with a flat principal of $100,000. Next, we need a target. Right now, the average rent for an apartment in the US hovers right around $2,000 a month. That is the number we have to hit. Getting that $100,000 to generate $2,000 every single month requires stepping up what I call the yield ladder. The higher up you climb, the bigger the monthly check gets, but the risk to your orbital money multiplies. The goal isn't necessarily reaching the top rung. It's figuring out exactly which step on this ladder matches what you can afford to lose. We start on the ground floor with the most conservative option on the board, a company literally trademarked as the Monthly Dividend Company, Realty Income. This is a real estate investment trust, or a REIT. They buy physical real estate, rent it out, and by law, they have to pass almost all of their taxable income directly back to their shareholders. When you buy a share, you are buying a tiny fraction of over 15,000 commercial properties scattered across America. You're collecting rent from places like Walgreens. You're also collecting from Dollar General, FedEx warehouses, and local gas stations. The cash flow is spread out over dozens of industries. Because those leases are locked in for years, Realty Income has paid and raised its dividend every single year for over 3 decades. That streak survived the 2008 housing crash and the 2020 lockdowns without missing a single monthly payment. That safety comes at a cost, and the cost is yield. Right now, it pays around 5.26%. On a $100,000 investment, that gives you $438 a month. Against our target, you're only covering about 22% of your rent. A fifth of your rent is helpful, but the rest is still on you. You accept that gap because you know your $100,000 principal is heavily protected. If you want more income, you have to leave physical real estate behind and step up to the next tier, the lending market. This brings us to business development companies, or BDCs. There are thousands of mid-sized American companies, too small to borrow cheaply from Wall Street, but too big for a local bank. BDCs loan them the money at high interest rates, and they pass the spread to you. Main Street Capital is widely considered the gold standard here. It's internally managed, meaning the people making the loans are employees of the company. If the shareholders make money, they make money. But lending to mid-sized businesses carries real risk. When the economy panics and markets crash, investors assume those businesses will default on their loans. During extreme downturns, Main Street's actual share price has plummeted, dropping roughly 40% in 2008 and over 50% in 2020. Your account balance looks terrifying, even though the monthly dividend checks keep clearing the bank. If you can stomach that volatility, the math improves. Main Street yields about 8.47%. That's $760 a month, covering 35% of your average rent. You can push that number even higher in this exact same tier by choosing a slightly smaller lender, like Capital Southwest. A smaller BDC has fewer companies in its loan portfolio. If 3 businesses fail at Main Street, it barely registers. If 3 fail at Capital Southwest, it leaves a real dent in the balance sheet, which means the share price swings even harder when times get tough. Taking on that concentrated risk pushes the yield up to 10.99%. Now your $100,000 generates $916 every month. You are covering 46% of a $2,000 rent check with a single stock. Internally managed BDCs offer a massive boost in cash flow, but they only work if you log in during a recession, see your balance cut in half, and not hit the sell button. Stepping onto the next rung means moving away from calculated risk and into structural risk with lenders like Saratoga Investment. Saratoga focuses on what's called the lower middle market. They lend to significantly smaller, more fragile companies that have fewer options and are forced to accept much higher interest rates. This tier also introduces a new variable, external management. Instead of employees running the fund, an outside firm is paid a fee to manage the portfolio. They get paid based on the total size of the assets they manage. The bigger the fund grows, the more fees they collect, regardless of whether the actual shareholders are making a profit. If you accept that flaw, the payout is huge. Saratoga yields 14.67%. Your $100,000 produces $1,223 a month. You are knocking out 61% of your average rent. This is the absolute edge of justifiable yield. The cash flow is real, but you have to accept higher borrower defaults and a management team whose paycheck isn't perfectly tied to your success. Now we reach the top rung. Pennant Park Investment Corporation posts a staggering 23.59% yield. On paper, that's $1,966 a month. It almost entirely pays the $2,000 rent. Pennant Park runs the exact same lending model as Saratoga. So how is it mathematically possible for them to pay out nearly double the yield? This equation shows how yield is actually calculated. It's just a fraction. You take the annual dividend paid out and you divide it by the current share price. If a company's share price collapses, the bottom number gets smaller. Even if they are paying out the exact same dividend, or a lower one, that mathematical ratio shifts, and the resulting percentage yield automatically looks huge. Over the last decade, Pennant Park has slashed its dividend 3 separate times. Roughly 75% of their original monthly payout has simply been erased. But the dividend cuts are only half the problem. While you collect those checks, the underlying share price bleeds out by an average of almost 5% every single year. Run that math forward a decade. Your original $100,000 shrinks to about $64,000. And because the account balance is smaller, the actual monthly cash you receive drops right along with it. This is a yield trap. You aren't earning massive income from a thriving business. The company is slowly liquidating your own principal and handing it back to you disguised as rent money. Reaching your financial goals isn't about scanning a list and blindly picking the highest number. It requires mapping the specific asset class to exactly what you need the money to do and what you can psychologically handle. Let's lay out these 4 options based on actual investor profiles. If you cannot afford to lose your original principal under any circumstances, you stop at the bottom rung. Accept the 5% yield from a massive REIT, take the small rent subsidy, and protect your $100,000. If you need serious cash flow, covering 35 to 50% of your living expenses, and you know you won't panic sell when the market drops, internally managed BDCs provide the strongest balance of math and management. If you find yourself staring at 20% headline yields, dreaming of a fully paid apartment, ignore them completely. Never buy a yield without checking the 10-year share price chart first. Getting your rent paid by your portfolio is an incredible milestone, but it should never cost you your life savings to get there.